Hi there, I'm Chad Trofgruben. This video is part of a larger course on rigging and animating characters in Adobe Character Animator. Use the playlist to navigate the sections as they're uploaded. This course was recorded in 2018 and originally ran on Udemy, where it received strong reviews. I'm archiving it here because the material is still useful. If you want the course files, check the link below. You'll also find a link to the updated version with more current information. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something. When it comes to working with Character Animator, there are a few things you'll need to get the most out of your experience. First, you'll need a subscription to the Adobe Creative Cloud. This will gain you access to not only Character Animator, but Photoshop and other useful software for when it comes to working this way. The other thing that's recommended is a microphone and a web camera. You can control your character using these two devices. And if I come over here, I'm on the Record tab. This is where you'll gain access to your camera and microphone panel. And if I click on this, it will detect the web camera, which I'm just using a built-in web camera for this, and you have your microphone down here. So you can see by turning on this web camera, we're already controlling the character in a variety of ways, and that can all be dictated, and we'll show you all that in this course. But also, if I turn on the microphone, you'll see here now that he is talking based on the mouth poses I have provided in that rig. So right off the bat, you can see the web camera and the microphone are big elements to when it comes to animating inside of Character Animator. Now, the other thing you can do, let's say you have multiple devices. You can always come up here to your preferences. For the Mac, it's on Character CC. I believe if you're on Windows, you'll find preferences under the edit menu. So let's just go ahead and choose preferences. And here you'll see we have access to the audio hardware settings. This allows us to come in and choose which piece of audio hardware is being used to track my voice. You can see it's currently set to built-in microphone, and that's just a built-in hardware for the MacBook. But I could drop it down and choose my tutorial microphone that I'm currently using if I wanted to. So again, when it comes to animating in Character Animator, and if you want to have the most success, it's important that you have your hardware set up and ready to go before you begin the animation process. Now that you know a little bit about the hardware requirements, especially the camera and the microphone, I want to cover how to set a rest pose when working in this software. Now, I might not say this all the time throughout the course because it does become second nature when you're working this way. But you'll see here where we have the camera and microphone panel, it says, look at the scene panel, then click the Set Rest Pose button below. So whenever you turn on your camera, it's best to set your rest pose. And the rest pose is the default pose for the character. And it's best to always just follow the directions when doing this. So all I'm going to do is just get my head into position, kind of within that circle, as you can see. I'm going to look at the scene panel, which is the center panel, and then we're just going to set our rest pose. So let me look. And now the rest pose has been set. You can see that the pupils are now acting a little bit differently, hopefully. Before they're kind of glitchy, but now they're more in line. You'll also notice, it's kind of hard to tell because of the lighting on this particular shot, but I actually have red dots on my eyes as well as my eyebrows and my nose and my mouth because it's tracking all of that now with the rest pose set up. And so again, this is great if you want to have more control over what you're doing. And if you want those refined motions, be sure to set the rest pose so that way Character Animator knows where to start. For this video, I am working on my iPad Pro. The reason is because whenever I design characters or even props and backgrounds, I use my iPad to do the artwork. And so when we talk about rigs, I'm going to go from the standpoint of you're bringing this over from another application, such as Procreate, or really anything that you can draw in can be used to create your rigs. The ultimate goal you have to keep in mind is you need to get this file either over to Photoshop or Illustrator. Just as long as you're able to do that, how you actually design the character is completely up to you. And again, in my case, and in the case of the people I work with, we love designing in Procreate, which is an application specifically for the iPad. If I come over here to my drawing folder and tap on that, you'll see I have Procreate within the list. So I can tap on that to go inside. And here, you'll view the character we're planning to use for this course. Now, with Procreate, you can design using layers, which we have plenty of. And how you design your layers and how you situate them does come into play when rigging. And we're going to cover that more in the next video when you get your items over to Photoshop or Illustrator. But here, I just want to show you what a structure can look like when you're designing in Procreate or another application before bringing it over to streamline it for Character Animator. You can see under my layers, I have a group labeled Chad, and under that we have heads, and then we have all these main body pieces. So we can go through here and see we have different hand poses and all sorts of different interactive elements that we can add to this rig as we bring it into Character Animator. And it's even set up for the head turn because we have 3 different head phases we can implement in, and that can be tracked using our camera. And one of these also has phonemes built in. Right here under mouths, if we tap on that and move down, you'll see we have phonemes here ready to go. Now, once again, the way Character Animator tracks phonemes, which are called visemes, I believe, in Character Animator, it uses its own naming system. And the same goes for everything. The way Character Animator will interact with your elements just depends on what you assign. But just know, if you do have your own naming system for the mouths, you will have to get familiar with the viseme system in Character Animator. You'll have to maybe assign certain things or double up on other items just to make it all work. But again, we'll get to that here in a moment. So anyway, the point of this video is just to show you can design your character basically any way you see fit. And once you have it set up, you'll want to come over here, in the case of Procreate, to the Action menu. And then under Share, we'll want to tap on PSD. This can take a moment depending on how big the file is. And once you get this set up, you have the ability to save it. If you have your computer on AirDrop, you can also just drop it right over to your computer. And you can also, of course, put it into your iCloud files, Dropbox, however you have your files set up on your iPad. So in my case, I'm just going to save to files, and we'll put it inside of our tutorials here. So I'm just going to come down here to my tutorials under Udemy, and I'll just put it in there for right now. And of course, this will be a work file for you to access as you continue with this course. So with that said, we'll pause and I'll see you in the next video. For this video, I am inside of Photoshop working off of 01 chadstart.psd. Feel free to open up this file if you wish to follow along. What we've done here is simply opened up the PSD file we exported out from Procreate in the previous video. And so here, when we look at the layers, we're going to see everything intact. And this is great because it allows us to design the characters the way we want, group everything and isolate important parts, and then we can reassemble inside of Photoshop so that it's easier to work with in Character Animator. So the first thing I want to do is look at the heads. You'll see that the way this was designed, and this was brought over from another artist, and this might be something that you will encounter when you are working with other artists. They might not be as privy to how Character Animator functions, so you might be required to go in and make changes. So here we have 3 head phases. for the side, front, and 3/4. And you can see it looks like this. And that's great because Character Animator allows us to implement head turns. But for the sake of what we're doing and to keep things easier, I'm going to remove 2 of these head poses to start, so that way we can focus on the other parameters of this character, and then we will implement head turns later on so you can understand how all that works. So all I'm going to do is select both of those and then choose to delete them by hitting the delete key on the keyboard. So now we're left with head 3/4. I can come in and just double click on that and rename it to head, and then hit enter. So now we'll take head and bring it above so that it's inside the main Chad group folder, and then we can click on heads and then hit delete on the keyboard to remove it. So now you're left with the new folder, and inside that folder, you're going to find your eyebrows, eyelids, pupils, eyes, and hair. Underneath that, you'll find mouths, and these are all the phonemes, or visemes as Character Animator likes to refer to them, that we can use to automatically lip sync. And then down here, we have what is called head 3/4. I'm just going to double click on head 3/4 right now and rename that to background, and then hit enter. Now, we will have to modify how these layers are going to function, and we can do that in the next video. I'm just going to collapse that folder for right now, and we'll come over here to the other folders. So here you have front hands, and we can enable a swap set inside of Character Animator for us to switch between hand poses, which is great, and that will work for our purposes. But once again, we're going to have to set this up a certain way so that it's easier to work with. So to begin that process, let's create some groups for our limbs and for the body. I can collapse back hands here just so I can see all the main layers. At the top, we have front arm and front hands. And then we have front foot, front leg, body, back foot, back leg, back arm, back hands. So to start, we're going to click on front arm, hold in shift, and then click on front hands. And then just come down here and click on the group button to group those items together. For right now, I'm just going to come in and rename it to front arm and hit enter. And you'll see if we expand this that we have those 2 layers inside. So now I'm just going to keep going. We will go with front foot and front leg, create a group, double click to rename it to front leg. And then we have the body, which I'm going to put into its own group. But let me just move on for right now to back foot and back leg. We'll select those, group them together, and name it back leg. And then you have back arm and back hands. Group that, and name it back arm. So there you go. Then you have your back hair and back hair 3/4, which can't go inside the head group because if we were to do that, it would overlay above the body. So if we go like this, you can see it's going to look like that. So we might have to do something with that, but for right now, we're just going to leave it, and we'll see if we can work with it inside a Character Animator. Now, the last thing I'll do before we wrap up this video is click on front arm, hold in shift, and then go all the way down to back hair and click on that. And then come down to the group button, create a group, double click, and we can rename it to body, and then hit enter. You can keep the background in if you wish. While we work in Character Animator, you can turn it on or off. Ultimately, it's up to you. But for now, we'll leave it in, and I might end up removing it near the end. But it also allows us to see the character easier as we work. So there you go. We've gone through the process of starting to streamline our layers. There is more we can do, but for now, I'm going to pause, and up next, we're going to continue modifying this character in Photoshop. For this video, I'm working off of O2 Chad Independent Groups.psd. Feel free to open up this file. We're now going to take this to the next step and start labeling certain layers as independent and grouping further so that Character Animator will have an easier time with everything that we are assembling. So the first thing I want to do is come up here to my layers, and you'll see we have the main layer, which is Chad. If I double click on that, I can rename it. And I want to come over here to the beginning before the C and put down a plus sign and then hit enter. So why did I just do that? Well, whenever you put a plus in front of a group within Photoshop and you intend to bring it into Character Animator, and this also applies for Illustrator, it will target that group as independent in Character Animator, which means it's going to animate differently. It's not going to be attached to the main layer. However, it will still have influence, and it allows you to target specific body parts to make them look more natural, essentially. Now, you can toggle this on and off inside of Character Animator, but I feel it's important to show you how you can do it all. And so once we get to that phase, I'll remind you that, again, adding the plus sign is the same as toggling it on and off in Character Animator. So you also have some other considerations to make when doing this. For instance, if you want to control the eyebrows and the pupils and the blinks, you need to set those up differently as well. Here we have the front eyebrow, and then you have the back eyebrow, which is essentially the left eyebrow and then the right eyebrow. So what I'm going to do is create a group, and we'll name it plus right eyebrow. And we'll do a second one, double click, plus left eyebrow, and then hit enter. So once again, here is the right eyebrow, which is front eyebrow. We'll just click and drag and put it into that group. And then you have back eyebrow or left eyebrow, which will go into that group. So now you have something that looks like this. And we need to do the same for the eyes as well. So we're going to have to do just a couple different things here. So you have your eyelids separated out, which is good. And we will use this as we move forward. We'll also have to create a blink phase. So we have that, but then we have our pupils on the same layer, as well as our eyes. And what we need to do is separate out these two so that we have the left pupil and the right pupil, and the left eye and the right eye. And that's pretty easy. In this case, since they are separated, and it will allow us to easily select. So let's just start with pupils. I'll click on that and then come over here to your selection tool. And I'm just going to click and drag on any of the pupils so that it's selected, and then use Command X or Control X if you're on Windows. And then to paste in place, use Command Shift V or Control Shift V if you're on Windows. And now I can come in and rename this one to right pupil or r.pupil, just temporarily. And then right down here, you have the left pupil. So we'll come in and rename that to l.pupil. Then I'm going to create two groups. We'll put left pupil into one, right pupil into the other. And just so we don't get confused, we're just going to double click and rename group 2 to right eye with a plus in front of it. So right eye, and then hit enter. Come down here to group 1 for left eye, and of course rename it to plus left eye, and then hit enter. We'll have to do the same for the eyes. So click on the eyes layer, and then using your marquee tool, just come in and select one of the eyes, and then use Command X or Control X if you're on Windows, and then Command Shift V or Control Shift V if you're on Windows to paste that new eye. And once again, this will be the right eye, and I can just name it right eye for right now, or r.eye, just to stay within my naming conventions. And we will rename eyes then to l.eye, just like that. So then we can take r.eye and bring it into the right eye layer, just like that. And then left eye can do the same. And we'll want to make sure that the ordering is correct, so we'll bring left eye down like so, and then right eye down like so as well. So this is starting to look better. We do have some more work to do, but I will pause the video here, and up next, we will keep working with this Photoshop document. For this video, I'm working off of 03 chadbuildingeyes.psd. Feel free to open up this file. What I'm going to do now is build the eyes up more so that they work in line with Character Animator. You can see we started this process by putting in the right eye and left eye folders and making them independent with the plus sign. We now have to go through this and add another layer to each eye. The eyes act as a switch of sorts. Whenever you blink, it's going to switch to a blink phase. The pupil will track the actual pupils on your face and move around. And so you'll have to target those as independent since they'll be moving separately from the actual eye layer. So I'm just going to come in here and rename some of these things. We'll start with the right eye layer. I'm just going to rename it to right eyeball and then hit enter. And then coming up here to the pupil, I'm going to hit the plus sign and then type out right pupil. So now that will be independent and it will allow us to control it with our eyes. And then we're going to need the blink phase. But let me come down here and also rename these items on the left eye. So plus left pupil, and then we have left eye. Now let's go through and create the blink phase. So first, I'm going to locate the front eyelids, and we'll start with what will be the right eye. And I'm just going to duplicate this layer. And to do that, I'll just click on the layer and then use Command C and then Command V just to copy and paste quickly. And then I'm going to bring the front eyelids into the right eye. So the blink phase is going to be its own thing. And I'm going to zoom in by holding an Alt and then using my mouse wheel. And what I want to do, since the eyelids are on its own layer, is I want to create two separate layers for this. So we'll be using the same method we used before where we select part of the layer. In this case, I'm just going to select only around the top eyelid on the front eyelids layer inside the right eye. And then we'll use Command X or Control X if you're on Windows, and then Command Shift V or Control Shift V if you're on Windows to replace the lid. So now you have those two lids separated out. Now, I'm just going to come in and we're just going to do some basic editing here to make this lid look like it's blinking. Starting with the top lid, I'm just going to nudge this down a little bit like so. And then we'll come over here to the other lid and just bring it up a little bit. I'm going to have the top lid go down more than the bottom lid going up. So we'll just come in and we can kind of come down like this. So it looks something like that. So now, making sure we are on the appropriate layer, I'm just going to grab the eraser and we're just going to come in here and just shave this off a little bit like so. It doesn't have to be much, but just a little bit like that. And then we'll do it on this side as well. So it just kind of looks like that. So if we were to hide these other items, such as the eye, you're going to see it looks like this. And it's looking pretty good. Of course, we could go in and do some more things with that, but I think it'll work for our purposes. So with these two layers, I'm going to click once on front eyelids, hold in Shift, and then click on Layer 1. Right click, and then go all the way down to Merge Layers. And this will put it on one layer, as you can see. And I'm just going to double click on layer 1 and rename it to right blink, and then hit enter. Now, since these eyes are similar, what I'm going to do is just copy and paste right blink, and then we're going to bring it down to the left eyes group. Then, using the transform tool, I'm just going to come up here and move this over like so. And using my arrows, I can nudge it into place. And then using Command T or Control T to transform, I can come in here and just shrink this up a little bit so that it fits within the eye. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but that's pretty close. And then we can hit enter. And I would say that's looking pretty good. So now you have your eyes set up for blinks. The final thing you'll have to decide is if you want your eyes by default to be completely open or if you want them to have their eyelids. I think in this case, I'm just going to keep the eyes completely open without any sort of eyelids in place. And that will just be easier for when controlling my eye gaze. But we could also experiment with adding eyelids in if we feel it's needed later on, because we can always come back to this. So for right now, all I'm going to do is just make sure that these eyelid layers are out of the equation. And I can do so just by clicking and dragging and putting them outside where the background is. And we'll just keep those hidden, and if at any time we need them back, we can always refer to them. So there we go. We now have the eye blinks in place, and our eyes should be set up for animation inside of Character Animator. We'll pause the video here, and up next, we will set up the eyebrows. For this video, I am back in Photoshop working off of 04 chadbuildingbrows.psd. And here we're going to create 3 phases for the eyebrows, similar to how we created 3 layers for the eyes in the previous video. So, looking first at the right eyebrow layer, I'm just going to come in and drop that down, and we'll see we have in here our eyebrow. And if I hide it, you can see it's right there. What I want to do is double click on that layer and rename it to neutral, and then hit enter. We can re-enable it and we can see it. What I want to do is create 3 phases for each of these. So we have neutral, angry, and worried. So what we have going on with our eyebrows right now is pretty neutral, and I'm just going to leave that as the neutral phase. Next, we're just going to copy and paste a new layer and double click, and we can rename it to angry, and then hit enter. Let me hide the neutral eyebrow so it's easier to see here. And I'm just going to zoom in by holding an Alt and using my mouse wheel. Now, on the angry eyebrow layer, I'm just going to use Command T, and we're just going to rotate this. And since it's angry, we're going to rotate it down like this, about 25 degrees, and then we can move it down a little bit like so. And you can also, if you want, work with the shape of it. You could change the shape of it entirely. You could do all sorts of different things. It just depends on how you want to approach it. In this case, I'm just going to go with a simple change and leave it at that. And I want to come down now and do the same thing for the left eyebrow. So first I'll double click on back eyebrow and rename it to neutral. And then we will copy and paste and then rename this one to angry. And then we will hide neutral. And then we'll use Command T once again to transform. And I can rotate this down. Again, about 25 degrees. And then we can bring it down like so. Position it like that. And then hit enter. So now you have something that looks like that. And that looks more like an angry pose. And again, as we work with Character Animator, it'll actually track your eyebrows. So you can have them look angry or worried depending on what your eyebrows or the actor's eyebrows are doing. So we're just going to do the same thing for worried, except just in the opposite direction, we'll be moving these eyebrows. So once again, I'm just going to copy and paste my neutral position, we'll rename it to worried. And I'll start with the right eyebrow for this. And we're just going to grab this and rotate it in the opposite direction. So it'll kind of go up like this. And we won't go as far. We won't go 25 degrees. Maybe close to 13. And then you can raise it up a little bit. Perhaps like that. And maybe just bring it back a little bit. So something like that should be fine. And then hit enter. And again, just come down here to your left eyebrow. We're just going to come in and repeat that process so that we can check this out and see how it looks. Just rotate it like that, and you can bring it over. And just try to match it as close as you can with the other eyebrow. Perhaps down a little bit like that. So just rotate it and try to match it with the other eyebrow. There you go. So you now have your left eyebrow and your right eyebrow. And each of them contain all three poses that you'll need for when it comes to animating expressions inside of Character Animator.
You made it to the end. That's awesome. I hope you had fun and learned something. If you want to learn more, or perhaps you jumped into the middle and need to backtrack to previous lessons, you can always check out the playlist for this course. Also, if you need help and want to go further, the course files are always available on Udemy. Plus, we have the updated version of this course available on there as well. All of that is detailed in the description box below. Thanks for watching.